I logged into this link and through my laptop, and it was working fine. And then I came out of it, and then when I logged in again, the microphone wasn't working. So one of those quirks which never seems to end. So I'm forced to log in through my mobile phone. But nevertheless, it's good that I finally managed to come aboard. So let me get started right away. And this session on reporting and disclosures, I'm delighted to see that my fellow panelists, represent a wide range of industry as well as institutions. Some of you, I know for very long, and delighted to have you here. So the CII Annual Sustainability Summit, as all of us who've been attending it over all these years, has established itself as a flagship event in India's sustainability calendar. And one always comes away from the summit enriched with new insights from the many speakers and the participants of the summit. So this particular session is something which is very, very topical, very, very exciting. So without much further ado, I'm going to start with the introductions of my fellow panelists and then make a brief contextual setting and before I hand it over to my panelists. When I saw the names of my fellow panelists a few days back, I had little hesitation in agreeing to moderate the session because my job I knew would be that much easier, right? So let me start with Dr. Akira Srivastav, the ex-Chief General Manager and Head ESMD, Power Grid, and Consultant World Bank. All participants, I'm sure, have the links to the detailed profile. So in the interest of time, I'll just give a brief introduction and you can read the rest of the details. Dr. Srivastav is a seasoned professional with over 3 decades of experience in managing environmental and social issues across geographies. He completed his master's degree in 1981 and was also awarded the PhD from Lucknow University in 1986. He is a winner of the Young Scientist Botanist Award by the Indian Botanical Society for his research paper in 1983. After retiring as Chief General Manager and Head of Environmental and Social Management from Power Grid, which is a Maharatna CPSU, in June 2019, he's presently engaged with the World Bank as a consultant for India and Central Asia. His in-depth knowledge of environmental and social issues has found application in many countries across Asia, and he's closely associated with multilateral agencies like the World Bank, ADB, IFC, DFID, JBIC, and so on. He was bestowed with the Green Award in 2006 by World Bank for demonstrating excellent leadership in the field of environment and sustainability in South Asia. He's also a nominated member of the task force constituted by the Ministry of Environment and Forests to mitigate wildlife impacts. He's a member of the Multi-Stakeholder Steering Committee for GRI's SDG Agenda 2030 South Asia. He has presented several research papers and technical papers in various forums. Welcome, Dr. Srivastav. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Aditi Haldar, Director, GRI South Asia. Always a pleasure to have you with us, Aditi. Aditi and I go back some time. Dr. Aditi Haldar is an expert on sustainable development with over 24 years of experience. Her goal is to strengthen the integration of sustainable development and transparency into policies, strategies, management, performance, and communication through measurable enablers and results. Currently, she's a director, GRI Regional Hub South Asia, and her primary role is to advocate, research, communicate, and dialogue with multi-stakeholder constituencies in making sustainability and transparency a standard practice among South Asian and the global community. Her focus is on creating trustworthy conditions in society through credible information exchange between various stakeholders. She has been part of various national, regional, and global advisory committees, councils, and task forces for the government and regulatory bodies, as well as professional and academic institutions, including the GRI Technical Advisory Committee, Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Committee, UNGC, and so on. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Aditi Haldar. Welcome. Mr. Dharmendra Ravi, Senior Advisor, Health, Safety, Environment, Rio Tinto, India. Welcome to this session. Pleasure having you here. He has a master's in energy studies from IIT Delhi, and he has more than 13 years of experience in ESG reporting, sustainability strategy, and so on. Currently, he leads sustainability reporting at Rio Tinto, and his previous stints were at Ernst & Young as well as CII-ITC CSD. Welcome, Mr. Dharmendra Ravi, to the session. And we also have Ms. Rinika Grover. I don't have a detailed profile with me here. What I would do is, she represents Apollo Tires. She leads sustainability at Apollo Tires. What I will do is when her chance to speak comes, maybe Rinika, please give 2 lines of introduction about yourself for the others. But it's a pleasure to have you here in this session. Okay, so let me get into the way the session will be structured. Like all other sessions here, I'm going to request each of our panelists to make initial remarks on this topic for 6 to 7 minutes each. And after all of you have presented your thoughts, we will build up the conversation. I will pose a couple of questions each to you, and then we will take select questions from the audience. So before I invite our first speaker, I thought I'll just spend 2 minutes on contextualizing this session, which I think all of us are familiar with. But I think what I thought I will call out is that reporting and disclosures, the way it has evolved over the last decade or so, from a point where, there were a few pioneering early movers like GRI, into the situation today where it's like a crowded marketplace of standards bodies, raters, analysts, regulatory agencies, and of course the reporting companies themselves. What took the world of financial reporting more than 100 years has taken less than 2 decades for sustainability reporting. While this is a source of encouragement and optimism, it also brings in a few challenges for the stakeholders. For reporting companies, reporting is now a full-time occupation, and it's 24/7, 365 days. It also poses challenges in terms of duplication of efforts. For the investor or the independent analyst, the plethora of disclosures can be confusing in the absence of consistent taxonomies, standards, and metrics. There are 2 trends that are very clear and apparent over the last few years. One is the accelerated interest from investors in disclosures, what is now called framed as ESG disclosures. That's really good, because it has brought about a sharp focus on what is the business value that ESG practices can bring. So, but it's still early days, and we'll have to see how it evolves and matures. The other trend is that of regulatory demand for more comprehensive and better quality disclosures. And I think in this regard, India has been an early mover, with SEBI introducing its business responsibility reporting way back in 2011. Partly voluntary then, partly mandatory, but BRR was a platform which probably nudged many Indian companies to adopt disclosures as part of their annual report on a rigorous basis, along with GRI. And recently, SEBI has introduced its version 2, the business responsibility and sustainability reporting, which has also raised the bar significantly. There are several other nuances to the space of disclosures and reporting, which I'm sure we will hear from our speakers. So let me invite first Dr. Srivastav to come and present your thoughts on this topic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Narayan, and good afternoon to all. I would also like to thank CII for giving this opportunity to present insight on Power Grid's journey on sustainability reporting and disclosure. Since I am associated with the Power Grid for the last 29 years, so I thought I will be able to present if we because just give you a brief presentation understanding and I will start sharing that. Is it visible now? Is it visible?
Yes, it's visible. It's visible.
Yeah.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. So yeah. So I'm going to give you just a brief on the sustainability and disclosure on Power Grid perspective. So first of all, before starting, I will just give you a insight of what is Power Grid, so that you just get an idea. That Power Grid has started incorporated in 1989, but we have started operation in 1992, and then we became a central transmission entity in 1998. Recently, we have been given Maharatna. We are a listed company. So as far as financial disclosures is concerned, we have a fixed asset of 36.33 billion, turnover of 5.9 billion, profit is around 1.7 billion. As on date, brother, on June 21, we are operating 1,68,457 circuit kilometer of transmission line, numbering 1310, and we are able to transfer 410 MVA of power through this transmission network and 259 substations. Our availability is always beyond 99%, and at present it is 99.83%, and reliability based on the tripping per line is 0.13. We are rated, accredited rating is there, so you can see all these things. And another important thing is that we have been top 220 company has always given this fastest growing electricity with fifth consecutive year and third fastest growing electricity in the world. So with this background, I'm just coming to our Grid, why we have chosen to go for the sustainability reporting and disclosure. So first of all, I started our operation in 1993. But from very beginning, our management was in the line that we have to go for the sustainable development. So what we have endeavored at that time to achieve sustainable development through 5 interlinked themes: stakeholder, environment, network, statistics, and employees. Then we have taken many proactive approaches to see that thing materializes. That, and we are the first in the world. You can say we have got a well comprehensive written environment and social policy and procedure that was developed in 1998 and modified in 2005 and 2009. I will just show tell these some important aspects of ESPP in the later slide. Then we thought that we have to approach to establish an integrated documentation on environment, social, and economic performance. Help us because it helps us understand our stakeholder reaction, feedback on ESS impact, formulating management strategies to minimize the risk and maximize the opportunity, and showcase the culture of transparency and proactive approach. That is the most important thing as far as the disclosure is concerned. So coming to environment and social policy and procedure, this is the, as I've told you, this is the first of type of comprehensive document that has been developed by Power Grid in 1998 through a national consultation, after having a national consultation on the content of that. And then it was again modified in 2005 and 2009 to make it compatible with all the required legal regulations as well as the basic principle on which we are working is avoidance, minimization, and mitigation. And restoration and enhancement has also been included in 2009 edition. Apart from that, we have already got all the certification that integrated management system PAS-based 2012, EMS, AMS, all these things are there. Then coming to the uniqueness of the ESPP. This is the only document in the world that has been accepted by the World Bank in 2009 under their use of country system policy, because it is so comprehensive, it meets all their standards other than indigenous people, in which we are not able to showcase because we are not worked in the tribal area, or rather we have avoided tribal area. Then we are also signatory of Integrated Pact of Transparency from 2009. And ADB has also approved this ESPP in 2017 under country safeguard system. So in that way, the ESPP is our Bible as well as a document which can take us to achieve the goal of sustainable development. Because what we have done in the ESPP is we have taken all the environment and social management practices and dovetail into the project cycle, so that they are taken care at the appropriate level and appropriate time. So this has given a lot of dividends. So as well as so with all these things already in place, we thought why not go for reporting. So we have decided to go for reporting, and in that also we have become pioneer in the power sector of the country, that we have published our first sustainability report of 2008 and 9 in March 2010. Aditi was the mentor for that report. So I'm happy that Aditi is also there, and Ravi is also there, who has helped us in developing a subsequent report. So we have a long association with Aditi and CII also.
Dr. Srivastav, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
in the interest of time, can you have another 3 to 4 minutes at the most?
Okay.
Each speaker has about 7 minutes, so if you could please, focus on the main points that you want to. Yeah, another 3 to 4.
On these things. Yeah. So a lot of things are now being said about climate change, water scarcity, biodiversity, net zero, and all these things. So in spite of not having any direct impact on which are related to climate change, rather our assets are being impacted by this phenomena. But still, we have taken many measures to combat the climate change. So one of this is the most recent one is the use of inductive power in earth wire to power a telecom antenna. This, if you see that this will eliminate the DG set altogether, and it will give you a saving of 40 to 60 tons of CO2 per location per year. So that is one of the examples. Then progressively we are able to reduce the forest involvement from 6% to 2.5%, 2.1%. That has also resulted in 1.25 million tons of estimated CO2 absorption by this carbon sink that has been saved. Then rainwater harvesting has been made compulsory in all our installations. So you will find rainwater harvesting in all our installations, including our corporate office. Then encouraging use of green energy, we have installed many solar power plants in 70 substations, which are generating around 8,000 units of power and reducing the carbon dioxide by 8,000 metric tons annually. So this is our major initiative towards climate change, although we are not directly. We thought that sustainability strategy alignment matching UN development goals. So in that direction also we have taken some steps, and till date we are able to align our activities with 11 goals. So that thing is also we want to utilize that thing. Then we wanted to institutionalize sustainability agenda, establish council at corporate level, establish sustainability panel, credible individual and institution. In that direction also we have already worked, that we have already constituted a committee of expert of multilateral agencies as well as renowned environment and social expert on that. Establishes a review mechanism for continual progress. Another item that is in our mind is greening supply chain, that is also in great demand. So we are thinking in that direction also. With all these big things, we wanted to become a role model for energy sector in India and start a timeline for that. However, now recently we are seeing some challenges as far as reporting is concerned. particularly the investor is not ready to give the advice and inform investment based on sustainability disclosure. Why? Because existence of many reporting frameworks. There are, I think, 7, 8 reporting frameworks, renowned reporting frameworks. So business has discretion to apply as they see fit. This is the general tendency or general thing available in the market. And if it is not controlled, it is going to meet the ISO fate. This is my perception. And the discrepancies among data sets and differential rating. Based on the sustainability reporting, the different agencies are rating in the ESG and other things. So they are not able to do the justice rightly available because their standard, their analysis pattern is different. So we are getting differential rating based on same report. That is also a concern for us also. And another thing that we have thought that we should flag is that the realization as far as corporate world is concerned is only towards the compliance issue as a compulsion, which we wanted to change as a towards the interest of corporate world. So in that also, this was based on the McKinsey survey, and this is based on the
Dr. Srivastav to wrap
this is the last. This is the last slide, sir.
Sure.
2 minutes, 1 minute. Yeah. So as per the KPMG recent survey of December 20, they have already come out that investors working on reducing the number of standards for better management. And what they have informed that European Union is updating that EU non-financial reporting direction. The World Economic Forum has released a paper on common metrics. 5 major non-financial reporting organizations like GRI, International Integrated Reporting Council, Climate Disclosure Standard, and Climate Disclosure Project have published a statement of intent committing to work together towards comprehensive corporate reporting. The International Financial Reporting Standard also is working on towards this goal. So I think once we are able to achieve this standardization, then only the actual value of sustainability reporting and disclosure will be met. So with that, I just end my presentation and thank you all for patience, and I'm now open for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Srivastav. I think we will come back to you with questions a little later down the line. Thank you for that insightful presentation. May I now request Dr. Aditi Haldar to please share your thoughts, and may I request you to keep it within 6 to 7 minutes at the most. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Narayan. So I think I'll just give a background of what is GRI. Of course, I'm sure that participants who are attending today, they all must have heard about GRI and the GRI standard. But just to give a background and also what is happening recently and what is the the recent challenges that are coming up. So just a few words. Maybe I'm not going to share any slides. Yeah, I can just speak. Yeah, is that okay, Mr. Narayan? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, so the thing is that GRI has been and still is an independent international organization providing the global common language for corporate transparency, and we help businesses and other organizations understand and communicate their sustainability impacts. So what do we deliver? We deliver the GRI standards, the world's most widely adopted sustainability reporting framework, which is freely provided as a public good. And more than 2 decades have gone by. We started as guidelines, and then we went through several rounds of revisions, while the stakeholders, both the report preparers and the report users, they were actually using the information available in the sustainability reports based on GRI guidelines. And then we engaged continuously with 30,000 individuals and institutions from around the world to understand that is there a real need for us to move from guidelines to standard. And then from 2014-15, we started working, and 2016, we finally took a stand that this has to become a standard, and it was launched as GRI Standard. So that is what is our, in a nutshell, our history is. But we operate through a robust stakeholder approach, ensuring that there is participation and expertise of diverse stakeholders in the development of the GRI standards. So the GRI Secretariat and the GRI regional hubs are just a convening, group of people who ensures that the robust multi-stakeholder approach is followed. So, sustainability and enterprise, I think there are many steps that each enterprise have to take, and they can start, wherever they want to. Some of them go through the CSR route, some of them go through the environment, health, and safety route. But it doesn't really matter. The real issue here is that disclosure and reporting both enable the entity to actually become accountable to itself, that is not only the promoter but also its employees and the people who are the key decision makers, but also become accountable to the external world, to the entity. So this also creates an organizational structure that supports that which are those important and relevant environmental, social, and governance topics that they need to really address, because the business growth, which is so important to look at its risks and opportunities, are kind of weaved with the environmental and social risk. And that is why I think the disclosure and reporting is so much connected to the action laid by the company. So if a report is only just, talking about its vision and its policies without action, then, the purpose of reporting and disclosure is actually defeated. So the starting point is measurement of the environmental and social, issues which are important to the enterprise, and then how can they actually manage those issues which are relevant to them and their stakeholders, make the changes as and when required by target setting and communicating. So communication is important in a way that maybe, an entity is doing a lot of things within, but who really knows, what the entity stands for and what the entity would like to do in the next 2 years or 5 years down the line. So presenting a communication in a form of a report is important, because one may be doing a lot to create sustainable change, but it doesn't create value for the company if no one knows about it. So communication becomes very much part of the process of measurement, management, change, and communication. The GRI is, where I belong to. I am working from the South Asian, regional hub. We are based out of New Delhi, but the secretariat is based in Amsterdam with 7 regional hubs like us in other continents as well. So we set the standards, which includes, I think, the 3 universal standards applicable to all organizations. And there are 34 topics, which are specific standards organized into economic, environmental, and social series. So as an institution, we had the guidelines, and since 2016, we have the standards. So what did we do? What is the impact? We are very happy to actually share that there are more than 40,000 reports on the, the GRI website, and 75% of the largest 250 companies in the world report based on, GRI standard. And around 450 organizations from 68 countries are active in the GRI community, who are really our foundation and pillar, not only supporting GRI through its financial resources, but also, support the mission and vision of GRI to make sustainability reporting a standard practice. We also
Aditi, sorry, can I request you to wrap it up in 2 minutes?
Yeah,
sorry.
Minutes. Yeah. So it is, GRI also could work and engage with government and policymakers and regulators. And 168 policies in 67 countries and regions refer to the GRI standards. And that is where I think the real change is happening slowly. In the recent times, European Union has decided to build its, corporate social sustainability reporting directive, and GRI is the partner which is going to give the technical input to create that. We are working with IFRS for the dual materiality and the enterprise value creation. And in South Asia, it is actually Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan and India, where there are rising numbers of sustainability reporters. And we have helped the stock exchanges to come up with guidances which will enable listed companies to report on. The challenges for GRI as an institution to see how the standard is being used or not being understood well is because information is power, and what gets in to the enterprise comes out in the form of disclosure. So this is where the whole challenge is for us to really strengthen and enable the key people within each entity to understand this and the credibility of information, whereby, because every information that is being measured, managed and acted on, it should really empower decision makers, not only within the entity, but at the government level, at the regulator level, at the, in the investor level. This is what is the real usefulness of a sustainability report. And thereby, we would actually like to work and engage with the report users, because we are doing more than enough with the report preparers. Of course, in a diverse country such as India, there are 45,000 or more registered entities, and there's a lot of work to be done. So I stop here for the moment, and I look forward to this panel discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Aditi. So, among the several points that you made, the point that you made on bringing in balance in reporting, for example, talking about risks, I think is very important. I'll come back to that later. Can I now request Mr. Dharmendra Ravi to please make your presentation and to call out your main points and keep it focused within about 6 to 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hope my screen is visible.
Visible. Thank you.
Firstly, thanks to CSD for providing this opportunity to discuss and share my thoughts on ESG disclosures and reporting with this eminent panel members. I've got privilege of working with two of the panel members in my earlier consulting career. I learned a lot from them. It is good to represent industry and discuss on this key topic. I have slides, but I won't discuss everything. I will take a key aspect and I will try to explain it in detail. Yes, ESG disclosures and reporting will stay and is the future of the reporting. Given the situation where we led the world now and the environment we have created, I believe implementing and adopting ESG strategies are the best possible way to strike a balance. Global warming and recent environmental disasters such as wildfires, floods, and current pandemic has increased the certainty of ESG. ESG is beyond environment and all climate change issues. It covers working conditions, inclusivity and diversity, risk management, corporate governance, and many more aspects. Going forward, all the key drivers which you're seeing on the screen, they will make corporates accountable on the ESG criteria. Companies adopting ESG criteria and building their framework, aligning to the materiality and the stakeholder requirements as long-term sustainable future. This concept is well recognized by the investor fraternity, and they have started investing in companies which has proactive approach to ESG policies and implementation. Just to give an example, the collective asset under management represented by UNPRI, Principles for Responsible Investment signatories, increased to $121 trillion in 2021 compared to $103 trillion in 2020. And remember, it has started with $6 trillion in 2006. An interesting fact here is PRI has around 4,200 signatories, out of which 54% of the signatories are added in the last 3 years. So you can understand the growing interest in ESG investing. Going forward, leaders will be remembered not by the revenue or financial growth of the company, but remember based upon the purpose-led leadership and shared value they create. Young professionals are more likely to join companies which have sustainable culture and more transparent in disclosures. Companies should have a board-level governance body which assess, monitor, and drive the ESG policies and implementation. And also link your CEO or executives' incentive plans to ESG targets and performance, so that the ESG is driven from the organization from top to bottom. At Rio Tinto, to give an example, we have a board-level committee, sustainability committee, which foresee sustainability related aspects. And also our annual bonus of CEO and other executives is linked with ESG performance. Given the outset, I want to leave a few thoughts on fundamentals of ESG disclosure for the attendees and the panel for the further discussion.
Yeah, you have another 2 minutes, Mr. Dharmendra. Can I request you to wrap it up in the next 2 minutes?
Yeah, Narayanji, I'm tracking my time as well. As Narayanji rightly pointed out, given the mandatory requirements and pressure from the stakeholders, companies tend to put their muscle behind reporting. I understand since it is mandatory, but I firmly believe and recommend putting those energies and finances in fundamentals in building ESG framework and implementing the policies and strategies which will benefit the company in creating a ESG culture among employees and build a long-term sustainable enterprise. Secondly, in the current environment, we have so many guidelines, so many standards, so much of investor requests. So it is overwhelming and confusing for the companies who is entering the evolving ESG 14. At Rio Tinto, in order to meet this increasing demand of requests, we have developed a sustainability fact book, which has ESG metrics and performance, and a mapping with relevant standards like GRI, SASB, and TCFD as well. So likewise, companies may choose to report their ESG metrics in a central repository, and also instead of working in silos for the starters, they can lean on to associations like CII, like we lean on to our association ICMA, and create a collaborative journey in the ESG aspects. In the future, I believe there will be more emphasis on universal ESG standards, like one we have BRSR and WF-IBC are examples. If not universal standards, at least the sectoral standards for companies, industries to follow and provide universal metrics, universal ESG metrics. I think companies should and will revisit the materiality and disclose the key important metrics in their annual disclosures. And there will be increase in the national level regulatory requirements as well, as we're seeing now. So I want to leave here with a quote from Sir David Attenborough. Human beings are the greatest problem solvers our planet has ever known. We are yet to apply ourselves to this problem with the scale and urgency it requires. Thanks, Narayanji.
Thank you, Mr. Dharmendra. I will come back to you with a specific question on your company's reporting a little later. Now, can I request Ms. Rinika Grover to please come and make your presentation in 5 to 6 minutes? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narayan. Am I audible, first of all? So I'll take about 5 to 6 minutes. Just a little brief introduction. Actually, since you do not have my profile, I've been working in this space for nearly 25 years. and most of the profile is on my LinkedIn. So in the interest of time, I'll just mention that. If the panelists, if the attendees would like to have some more information, everything's updated on my LinkedIn profile. In terms of when we are talking about sustainability reporting, I mean, I think when most of it's already been said, so the best part of going into the panel towards the end is that most of the stuff is already spoken about. And I can only emphasize that the demand for transparency on sustainable and socially responsible practices over a period of time has been rising, and it's specifically from the stakeholders who keep demanding on these information and transparent information in terms of having it shared in this space. So I particularly don't have a presentation which is kind of highlight, because we see for the last time, and that's been said by Aditi and the other panelist members as well, that there's been a surge in the sustainability reporting over the last few years. And one of the key examples I'd like to illustrate is the proportion of the S&P 500 companies that publish sustainability or the ESG reporting has risen to about 90% in 2019 from where it was in 20% in 2011, which is itself a telling statement and a huge leap what you see today in today's environment. So we will see there's an absolute massive increase, and that's something the other panelist members were also mentioning, that how we have nearly 40,000 reports on the platform in terms of sustainability reporting, and that's one of the drivers for Apollo Tyres as well. I mean, Mr. Narayan, you mentioned some of the the trends, the accelerated interest from investors or the regulatory demand, and that's particularly in this space for us as well. One of the key drivers is basically stakeholder driven, because stakeholders have been exerting a lot of pressure for sustainability report. And one of the examples here I have specifically from the customers, there's a very interesting study that was done by IBM, which said that about 80% of the customers indicate sustainability as really, really important, and 60% are willing to make considerable choices in terms of willing to change their shopping habits as well based on environment and environment impact. So these are really, really telling statements, and it's very critical for us to realize that how the whole environment and how the whole ecosystem's been changing. And an unequivocal role is being played by the investors, its community as well, where you see a lot of investment decisions being made based on the ESG disclosures, what Dharmendra was talking about earlier. These are the few trends that are shaping the entire ecosystem. And for us at Apollo, we've also been following similar trajectory. However, I mean, when you talk about, of course, the role of government has been really, really pertinent over here as well, which you particularly highlighted in terms of how the BRR and now the BRSR is pushing or accelerating the organizations to embark on this journey. For us at Apollo, we started this back in 2010, where we, in order to reach out to a wider range of our stakeholders and communicate our sustainability performance, we started the initial set of sustainability reporting. Those disclosures, what we were making out in the public domain, they've been really instrumental in assessing the actual performance, setting benchmarks for us, and supporting our journey for triple bottom line. Whilst we started that in 2010, one thing we started to look at overall was we adopted the ISO 26000 framework, which is an international standard on social responsibility, about 3 to 4 years. And in the last few years, we have developed our standard operating procedures for 5 of the 7 core issues in ISO 26000. I've got them independently assured as well. So that's something we embarked on, and that's what our report kind of emanates in terms of how we have presented it. the reporting format in Apollo, if I would talk about, it's not just, it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's very stakeholder led, because each of the stakeholder, be it customers, investors, or your government, each of them have some kind of a stake or some kind of information required from the particular reports. So our report is more or less, or the disclosures that we made in the public domain are more or less is like a composite report, which kind of talks about the BRR side, which is of course going to go towards BRSR, which is a standardized, a mandatory requirement.
I request you to wrap up in a bit.
I'm just about to wrap up. And the other bit, it talks about the overall sustainability report is more or less, it's not, we've tried to sync it with GRI standards. It's not totally GRI, but it does take several inferences from there. We've tried to map it with our overall 17 SDGs as well, just to see where exactly we stand out. And overall, the entire report, which we were talking about, which we've spoken about in terms of how the investor community has to have the language of, understanding. So we've tried to create a capital creation model for the investor community as well, just to give them the information what's required from our from the report. So I think in a nutshell, I would just say that we've from where we were in 2010 to where we are in 2021, there's a huge amount of transition that's happened from the starting point till now to reflect and showcase our stakeholders in terms of what's available for the ESG indicators. So that's about, and I'm happy to take any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Renika. So, actually, this is a topic where we can easily talk for about 2 hours. But, as we speak, we just have about 15 minutes to the end of the session. So while originally I had planned to ask 2 questions each, I'm going to stick to 1 question for each panelist. And then we'll see if we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions from the participants in this session. I'm going to start with Aditi. So Aditi, GRI has of course been a pioneer in many senses of the world when it comes to reporting. What are your views on convergence to unified or near-unified standards? That's one of the big asks of reporters. So that's one. And I'm going to sneak in a sub-question to that. If there's one thing that you would like to see changed in the reports of companies, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think I'll take the second question first, because that's very close to my heart, and that I think, I don't feel helpless to kind of say that, oh, this is never going to happen. So the second question is about what is that change I would like to see in a company. I would like to see balance in sustainability reports. And why balance? Because I think when I'm reporting to someone, if I am very honest and if I talk about my failures, I think, whoever I'm reporting to can become very happy, because he or she will know automatically, where I am coming from and what is it that actually I'm doing on the ground. I'm not like covering up. So this is, I think, my constant endeavor to see sustainability reports bring balance. So that is like 1 point agenda. The second question that you said about, harmonization of standards, I think this is a very big issue from the beginning, when I think the word standard came to, humanity, I would say. And there are so many frameworks that has come up, because every time I think we all want to be improving, by the day. So that sheer, I think, human tendency to improve from whatever we have to wherever we want to go, pushes some organizations and individuals to say, oh, we can do a better job. Therefore, the market will be always flooded with numerous standards and frameworks. We can't stop it, really. And many of them would love to say that more the merrier, because any enterprise can choose from, and it all depends on what the organization wants to get out of following one reporting framework or several reporting framework. But ultimately, I think it depends on the company itself to decide very smartly what would they get. So having the purpose at the end of this whole effort of reporting should help them determine to choose the best.
Sure. Thank you, Aditi. On this matter of balance, the thought that comes to my mind is one way of doing that is to incentivize companies to report your negatives. So the template must have negatives as part of it. And if you don't, obviously you don't have to forcibly do that. But if you don't do that, you lose some points. In India, we all are aware of our obsession with, from our school days, our obsession with topping and being first and not talking about negatives, right? So,
Very true.
yeah, so I'm sure, but there are ways of bringing that balance out. Thank you very much. Dr. Srivastav, one question I wanted to ask you is reporting, sustainable reporting, different in some ways for public sector companies vis-a-vis private companies? That's one. And the second part of the question is the reverse of what I asked Aditi. If there's one thing that you want to see changed in reporting standards, what would that be?
Yeah. So first of all, I will also like to answer second question first, because we are facing a problem of differential rating by different agencies following different standards. For example, if I just give you an example of CDP, they are following altogether different parameters for ESG rating. In spite of informing them, take the example of power grid, that we are not in the business of any activity that is directly related with the climate change or in GHG emission. Still, the questions are coming on that. So that is why we have talked about that this challenge has to be met by some standards, harmonization of standard that you have also talked. So that is one thing. And as far as public sector and private sector, I don't think there is much difference. But yes, public sector is bound by different regulation of Government of India. So while reporting, we have to keep that in mind, because we are also bound to RTI, to vigilance, to all other things. So while reporting, as Aditi has said, we have to be very, very careful balancing the report. So we cannot antagonize anybody as ministry is concerned, as far as so that is the only difference you can say. Otherwise, as far as parameters and reporting is concerned, more or less same.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Mr. Dharmendra, I'm going to bring this topic of balance back into your context, which is, you represent an industry which is known as an extractive industry, right? How do you bring out this into your reporting? How do you try to bring out your externalities or your negative externalities into your reporting? That's one. And the second part of it is the same question that I've asked others. If there's one change that you want in reporting standards or frameworks, what would that be?
So thanks, Narayanji. I will respond to first question first. Being extractive industry in the public mind, there's a lot of negativity on us. But if you see, we help the humans progress into the next generation. So without metals and mining, so it's pretty difficult in order to reach the future goals. Let us talk about lithium. So we are going to net zero. We are talking about decarbonization and all. Then the batteries, which is required for the renewable energy storage, it requires lithium. So we are into that industry. We are the ones which provide the elements to build the future. So coming to the balance in the reporting, so whatever events happen, at our industry, in our company, we do provide a balanced report. We do publicly disclose what has happened, what is going on, what is the future, and whatever the lessons we are getting from those incidents, we are building on that. That's one thing on the balance. And coming to the second question on the standardization, this environment, I think, require a standardized ESG metrics. I think Aditi, you will definitely second that. We have numerous standards, numerous guidelines. So we ourselves, we felt a brunt for the last 5 years in ESG reporting. So what we did, we created a sustainability fact book. Whoever wants information, gather that. Whoever wants a chunk of it, whoever wants the mapping part, get it from the sustainability fact book. So that's how we are actually countering the these numerous standards. But hopefully there will be a single standard, not a single, at least a sector-wise standard in the future.
Okay, thank you. Renika, coming to you. So my question to you is a little slightly different, which is that, your industry, the company that you represent, is an OEM to, the final automobile manufacturer, being a tire company. Have you seen a trend of the primary manufacturer, the automobile manufacturer in this case, coming back and engaging with, suppliers like you very closely in terms of, reporting and disclosures? So are they asking you for various kinds of metrics and so on and so forth? And does that have some kind of influence on your own reporting? That's one. And of course, the second part of the question is the same question. What is that one thing you would like to see changed from sustainable reporting frameworks?
Sure, thank you. I'll just take a couple of minutes, and it's a very pertinent question you asked, the first one, but like others, I will answer the second one first, which is an easier one. And I'll take a leaf from Aditi's book, which is, it talks about balance and sustainability reporting, and that's something one would want to see. That's one thing one would like to see, because currently there are lots of standards. With the availability of lots of standards, one thing that we are consciously trying to do is trying to dovetail standards and have a representation in our report which is more meaningful for our various stakeholders. So that's an uphill task. I would say it's an arduous task. It's not that easy, but trying to emulate that and put it in the report in terms of which is much more meaningful for all the stakeholders is something that we are moving towards. And that's something in the last, as I mentioned, in the last few years, our report has gone through a transition stage, and it kind of talks more about the ESG side in particular areas of environment, social, and governance side of it. With regards to your first question about the OEMs, definitely it is something that has led to this change as well that I was talking about, because I'm just going to give you one example recently. So even for our OEMs to consider us, in the supply chain for an RFQ process, there's certain specific requirements, certain specific standards that are required from our side to have been met, and only then we qualify for the RFQ process. So more or less, I mean, talking about the REACH compliance for the tire industry, or talking about in terms of our, which is these days, it's a really, a buzzword, which is net zero. So more or less, all the OEMs would like to see that how, as an organization, as a tire company, we are moving towards a net zero, a space. And that's something they just do not want us to talk about it, but they would also like to see where exactly whether we have it in our reports or not. So for us, that's one of the key reasons that in the sustainability report, climate change is one of our key, absolutely, key pillars. And we are working in climate change. We've done TCFD study. We are a respondent on Climate Disclosure Project as well. And internally, we're fixing targets, but we have aligned ourselves with the European Green Deal. So that's the kind of stuff that is because the automobile industry overall is way ahead, whilst the tire companies are still, I would say for us, for our industry, still matching up. But there is a huge ask from our OEMs to even consider us. If we're not there, we kind of lose, we just kind of lose the boat. We've lost it. So that's something we're absolutely, it is critical, and that's something we're always asked for. And we're working towards that in our sustainability report as well. And that's kind of this time specifically this year, there is a huge transition which one can see in the reports as well.
Thank you. That was very insightful, Renika. So I think we've come to the end of a session. I'm CII team. I'm not sure whether we have time for participant questions. But if I have to summarize what I've heard, number one.
Mr. Narayan, can I just come in just for one thought for all panelists?
Mm-hmm.
Because CDP standard talks about the incentive to be linked with the decision made in the board on climate change. So that is the biggest difference that you see in PSU and private companies.
Okay.
I just wanted to know all other private company, what is their view on that?
Maybe any one of you can answer, either Renika or Dharmendra. Very quickly, we are at the end of the session.
Question. Yeah. For the private companies, like we being a private company, we have linked our ESG performance, basically climate change and social and governance, all these three, to the CEO and other executives' performance. So,
thank you.
A lot many companies are doing it as of now.
But it's a pertinent question. I think we're still in very early days, Dr. Srivastav, on linking incentives to ESG performance. We are still in very early days. So, if I have to summarize very quickly in 3 sentences what I've heard, one is, there is a plethora of disclosure standards, and there's also a lot of reporting that's going on, which is very good. So a lot of information out there. However, there's definitely a need for balance. I think the tendency is to talk about all the good things that you've done, which is very good, but don't be afraid of talking about your negative things also, because that's what really gives value to a sustainable report, right? The third thing, of course, I've heard from all of you is, can we please have convergence to 1 or 2, but much fewer standards and frameworks than we have today. That, I don't know who's going to do that, who's going to bring convergence, which agency, or is it an invisible hand? We don't know, but that's clearly a crying need from reporting companies. On that note, I would like to thank each of you.